Chapter 8. Enemies at the Door. Henrik and Koras traveled under the dense canopy of the Shalu forest, the sounds of nature muffled by the overwhelming tension in the air. The day had started calm enough, but as they pressed deeper into the forest, the atmosphere seemed to thicken with the threat of something lurking nearby. Henrik's hand constantly hovered near the hilt of his sword, his sharp eyes scanning the shadows between the towering trees. Koras, however, seemed unnaturally calm. His staff tapped rhythmically against the ground as he walked, his brow furrowed in deep thought, but his gaze never lingered too long on any one thing. "I thought the Shalu forest would be more vibrant," Henrik commented, his voice low as he carefully stepped over the gnarled roots that crisscrossed the forest floor. Koras nodded, his eyes narrowing as they approached a stream. "It used to be. The unkind have poisoned much of the land, leaving only shadows of what once was." Henrik's jaw clenched at the mention of the unkind. His thoughts drifted to Kipt and his comrades, still defending their homeland against the relentless onslaught. How long could they hold without him? How much time did he have left before the unkind reached even further into the lands of their allies? Suddenly, a rustle in the nearby bushes startled Henrik. He instinctively drew his blade, holding it at the ready as he scanned the surroundings. Koras, in contrast, raised a hand, a faint glow emanating from the runes on his staff. "It's nothing," Koras said, though his voice was more strained than usual. "The forest is restless." Before Henrik could respond, the faint sound of wings cutting through the air caught his attention. He glanced upward just in time to see a dark shape circling above the treetops. The silhouette of a large bird, too large to be anything natural, swooped low before landing in a clearing up ahead. "Messenger falcon," Koras muttered, his expression darkening. He motioned for Henrik to follow him as he hurried toward the clearing. When they arrived, they found the falcon perched on a low branch, a scroll tied to its leg. Henrik reached out, carefully untying the scroll and handing it to Koras. The wizard unrolled it with swift, practiced fingers, his face tightening as he read the message. "What does it say?" Henrik asked, already sensing the gravity of the situation. Koras's brow furrowed deeply as his eyes scanned the parchment. "The elves. They're reporting that the unkind have reached their outer borders. They've breached Heliopolis's outer defenses. And there's more. A dark force leading them." Henrik felt a cold pit form in his stomach. "How far away?" "Closer than we thought," Koras replied, his voice grim. "If they've reached the elves, they could be in Kip's heartland before long. Worse still, there's something different among the unkind now. A new leader, something the elves call the Dark One." Henrik cursed under his breath. "We need to move faster. If they've reached the elves, Kipt could already be overrun." Koras nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the message. "This Dark One concerns me. We've heard legends of a creature capable of commanding the unkind with powers far beyond anything we've encountered before." Henrik's grip tightened on his sword hilt. "And now it's real?" "It seems so," Koras said, rolling the scroll back up. "The elves fear this creature may be the source of the unkind's newfound strength. If it reaches Kipt, or even worse, Tantua, it could mean the end for all of us." Henrik's mind raced. They needed to complete the tasks set before them, but now it seemed their time was even more limited than before. "What do we do?" Koras gazed out into the forest, his fiery brown eyes unreadable. "We keep moving. The tasks must be completed, but we will have to be more cautious. If the unkind are this close, it's possible their scouts are already here in the forest." As if on cue, the air around them seemed to grow colder. The sound of distant footsteps, heavy, labored, and distinctly inhuman, echoed through the trees. Henrik's heart skipped a beat. "They're here, aren't they?" Koras didn't answer. He simply raised his staff, the runes along its length glowing brighter, casting an eerie light over the surrounding area. Henrik drew his sword, his body tensing as the footsteps grew louder. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a hulking creature, its skin mottled and gray, its eyes glowing with a sickly yellow hue. Behind it, more shapes appeared, each more grotesque than the last. They were the unkind, and they were closing in. Henrik didn't hesitate. He surged forward, his sword slashing through the air as he met the first of the unkind head-on. The creature snarled, swiping at him with claws as long as daggers, but Henrik was faster. His blade cut through its tough hide, and the creature collapsed with a gurgling cry. Karaz, meanwhile, unleashed a torrent of energy from his staff, arcs of lightning and fire erupting from the runes and striking down several of the advancing unkind. The air crackled with magic, the scent of burning flesh and ozone filling the forest. But more of the creatures kept coming, their grotesque forms relentless as they swarmed toward Henrik and Karas. "We can't stay here," Karas shouted over the din of battle. "There are too many of them." Henrik's muscles burned as he fought off the relentless onslaught. "Agreed. Where do we go?" Karas pointed toward the mountains in the distance. "There's a cave system near the base of the mountain. We can use it to lose them." With a final sweeping blow, Henrik cleaved through another unkind, then followed Karas's lead, sprinting through the trees. The unkind screeched in fury, their heavy footfalls shaking the earth behind them as they gave chase. Henrik could feel his heart pounding in his chest, his breath ragged as they ran. The creatures were fast, but Karas's magic slowed them down just enough to keep a narrow lead. After what felt like an eternity of running, the mouth of a cave came into view. "In here," Karas called, ushering Henrik inside. They plunged into the darkness, the cool air of the cave a sharp contrast to the heat of battle. Henrik sheathed his sword, his body trembling from the exertion as he caught his breath. "That was too close," Henrik said, leaning against the cold stone wall. Karas nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. "The unkind won't stop, not until they've taken everything." Henrik's mind raced, thoughts of Kipt, Tantua, and the looming threat of the Dark One swirling in his head. The tasks needed to be completed, but the situation was more dire than either of them had anticipated. "The elves won't hold out for long," Henrik said, his voice heavy. "We need to finish this." Karas, his face shadowed by the dim light of the cave, nodded in agreement. "We will, but now, more than ever, we must be vigilant. The unkind aren't just an army, they are a plague, and the Dark One is the source of it all." As the sound of the unkind echoed faintly outside the cave, Henrik and Karas steeled themselves for the long journey ahead. There was no turning back now. They had to complete the tasks, gather the strength of the dwarves, and prepare for the final battle against the unkind. Far to the north, within the towering walls of Heliopolis, the Queen of the Elves, tall and radiant with her crown of silver leaves, watched the horizon. Her sharp, almond-shaped eyes narrowed as her scouts returned from the borders, their faces weary and bloodied. She already knew what they would say before they spoke a word. The unkind were relentless, more so now that this Dark One led them. The skirmishes on their borders had grown fiercer, and the lands that had once been bathed in sunlight now bore the mark of shadow and fire. Beside her, a council of elven elders stood, their faces grim. "The unkind are no ordinary foe," one of them muttered, his voice laced with ancient wisdom. "Their numbers grow each day. If they break through our defenses—" "They won't," the Queen interrupted, her voice sharp. "We will not allow them to." "Your Majesty," another elder began cautiously, "the humans of Kipt and the dwarves of Tantua have been contacted. Envoys have been sent to the giants and the dragonkin. But if they refuse—" They won't refuse, the queen said, though her tone suggested she was not entirely sure. They can't, not if they value their own survival. The council fell into silence, the weight of her words settling over them. But the queen, ever regal and determined, refused to let despair cloud her judgment. "We must prepare for the worst and hope for the best," she said. "Our people will not fall. We will fight until there is nothing left to fight for." As she gazed out over her kingdom, she whispered a prayer to the ancient gods of her people. If the unkind were to be defeated, it would take more than just elven skill and magic. It would require the unity of all the realms, dwarves, giants, dragons, and men alike. For now all they could do was wait and hope that their message reached willing ears.